Hi. We're going to talk about the AKS cluster creation using Terraform. So, how are you going to create? What are the prerequisites for creating this AKS cluster? AKS stands for Azure Kubernetes Service. First, for creating Azure Kubernetes Service, there are certain prerequisites which need to be done before we start creating the Azure Kubernetes service cluster using Terraform. So first, we have to install the Terraform in our local environment where we are going to use the Terraform to create the Azure Kubernetes cluster on the Azure cloud. And then we have to install the Chocolatey using the Windows PowerShell. So using Chocolatey, we are going to install Azure CLI, which is the command line interface to run the commands for Azure once we create the Azure Kubernetes cluster. And log into the Azure using the AZ login to make sure that we got the right credentials getting stored and saved in the configuration, the local desktop that we're going to use for interacting with the Azure Kubernetes cluster. Once we do that, we got to create some Active Directory service principal account for our Azure Kubernetes service. In case of Azure, Azure application need to be registered. Azure Kubernetes service is going to be a registration application, registered application to be a registered application in the Azure Active Directory. So once we do that registration of the Azure application, Azure Kubernetes service application, we got to create the got to get the tenant and app ID values for signing in. Once we get these things, then we got to create the application secret. This application ID and application secret are going to be stored in the terraform.tfvars files. So that we are going to do that. So once we do that, we are all set for our creation of the AKS cluster. So first and foremost, for creating an AKS cluster, we got to download these Terraform standard AKS cluster provider files for the Terraform project to be downloaded. So we're going to download this Terraform provision AKS cluster project into our local environment using the git clone, and then we point the directory to this git clone directory, and then we are going to run the Terraform init, which will install the provider in the local environment, and then set it ready for our Terraform to get creating the AKS cluster. So before we create, we do a Terraform plan, which will show us what are the resources getting created using this Terraform project, and the list of resources that's going to getting created in the Azure Cloud, target Azure Cloud, and then what are the other dependencies for those resources that are going to get created internally. So all will be listed there, and once we do the Terraform apply, then it will start creating those resources. We got to confirm that once you do the Terraform apply. So let's go into the configuration portal. So once we do that, we got to use the kube control. After creating the AKS cluster, we have to use the kube control to interact with this AKS cluster. So for that, we're going to use the AZ AKS git credential and use the resource group name, which is provided by an output in the Terraform apply command, and also the AKS cluster name, which is going to be given as an output during the run of AKS cluster creation. So once we use this and then get the credentials, that will show that we're getting logged into the AKS cluster. And once we do that, we can do the kube control create cluster binding. So the cluster binding will make sure that it creates a cluster role for this cluster binding cluster admin for the service account. The service account which you have got created, that's going to be used here internally using the kube system namespace and the Kubernetes dashboard. That's the service account we're going to use for this cluster role, and the username is going to be cluster user. So let's quickly go into the jump into the demo. So let me open the Bash, and I already downloaded and the GitHub repository and Terraform projects. So I'm going to do that. The name of this is cd learn Terraform provision AKS cluster. So that's going to be the one which we're going to use. So I already opened this particular project in the Atom ID's namespace, ID workspace. In the ID workspace, you can have, there are two different main files in this project. One is the providers.tf, where it shows the required version of the Terraform for this provider to use, and what are the providers we need to have in order to create the AKS cluster. So we have to have an Azure RM, that is remote resource manager, Azure Resource Manager. That's not what we mainly need for the Azure resources to be managed. So we are going to create the Azure Resource Manager. That's going to the main thing, and the source is going to be HashiCorp/Azure RM, and then version number is 2.25, which is the latest here. And then let's go into this AKS cluster. So this is a provider file that's going to be used when we do the Terraform init to install the Terraform providers. And then once we do that, we're going to get into this AKS cluster. So once we do a Terraform plan or Terraform apply, it uses this file and starts creating the required resources one by one. First, it creates this provider, and then it creates this resource group. For any of the resources to be getting created in Azure, we need to create an Azure resource group. So we are going to create a resource group where in the location is mentioned here as West US2. That's the target location which you're going to use. And then the tags are going to be attached to this specific as demo. We can just change the name of the as a different name. So for example, we can say the test environment. For the test environment, we are going to create this stack of resources. So on the resources are going to be mentioned here. The resources are going to be Azure Resource Manager, Kubernetes cluster. This Kubernetes cluster will have a default provider and will have a name and then location of this particular cluster, and the resource group which you're going to use, that's getting referred by this resource group here. So you have the resource group that's being referred here as your Azure RM resource group, and that's what it's there. And then the default name that's given here, and the default location is given here. And then it uses a DNS prefix, which is going to be a standard one. Random pet dot prefix dot id is going to be the id which is randomly generated, and then hyphen Kubernetes is going to be the suffix which you are going to use for any of this DNS routing. And then you should have a node pool for this cluster. The node pool will have a node count. So this is a number of nodes that's going to be there apart from the master node. And this VM size is going to be defined by the standard D2V2. That's the standard VM size that's given here. We can always change the size of the VM based on the requirement, based on the number of deployments which we are going to do on the AKS cluster. And the service principal is going to be the client ID, which is nothing but the app ID. That's going to be a variable. So that's retrieved from the variable. That's there in the Terraform.tf vars. The Terraform.tf vars is going to be the variables to be used. So this app ID is the app which we already got created, so which I'm going to show here how we're getting created. So for that, we got to use this Azure Active Directory. So once you go to the Azure Active Directory, and let's go into the application registration, app registration, which will, if you don't have anything, which it will not show anything. Since I already created this AKS-app as an app here, registered app here already been created. So once we create it, if you are not created, then we can click on this new registration. It will take into this as a single tenant or multi-tenant. We're going to create for a single tenant or multi-tenant, that we're going to choose it and then register it. You got to give the name also. So once we do that, it gets created, and then it gives the app name, whatever the name we give. So once we go into the app, it gives the app ID here. That's the app ID which we have configured in our variable here. So once we do that, we have to create the service account, service principal account, and then the service secret we have to create. For that, we got to go this way to the secrets, certificate and secrets, wherein you'll have this client secret getting created here. So if you don't have any client secret, you have to click on the new secret, and then you have to check what is the expiration time, and the description you have to give that creates this particular secret for this specific ID. So that's going to be the value here that's being copied and then pasted here. So that's what we make it as a password here, secret. So you have the app ID registered and then password registered. So, so this is what we are going to use for our authentication in order to create the AKS cluster on the Azure Target environment. So let's go into these details of back to the detail of AKS cluster Terraform. So when we have the service account, service principal will have an app ID and password getting from the Terraform variables file, and then role-based access control enable is true. So it is going to use the RBAC for our authentication. So that for that only we have created the service principal here. So that's about it. So that's all we have to have this cluster to be created. So without wasting time, let's go ahead and create the cluster. So first we have to do a Terraform init. This will install the providers which are required for our AKS cluster to be created. So Azure RM is already created, so we just checks it, and then if it's not created, then it creates it. Otherwise, it will just use it and then verify it whether the right version has been installed or not. And the right version of the Azure RM that we have mentioned has been created or not, and then it verifies the version number. Okay, so once it does, then we have to do this Terraform plan, which will show us what it's going to create, what the specific AKS cluster.tf file will create on the target Azure cloud on the specific region which we have mentioned as West 2, US West 2, West US 2. So that has been used here. So once we do that, so we already have that. So it shows that how many resources it's going to be adding. So the plan is to add 3 resources. So what are the resources getting added for through this are going to be listed here. So we have the Azure resource group, then you'll have a prefix, then we'll have a bunch of resource that's getting created as part of the Kubernetes cluster resource. So these are the 3 resources getting created when we apply this Terraform. So let's apply the Terraform. So once we apply the Terraform, it'll start creating the Kubernetes cluster, AKS cluster. So we'll verify that. Are you sure we're going to create that or not? You have to put yes here to approve it. So once we accept and approve, then we are going to create. It's going to create the resources, the 3 resources which has been listed in the plan. So let's go into these AKS Kubernetes service. Let's watch what happens. It takes time to complete this specific set of resources to be created on this cluster. So first it creates the cluster, and then it creates the master node and the node pool.